All right, I'm out here in Oklahoma, about to go to my second Thanksgiving dinner. I'm walking through a random neighborhood. Just kind of walked out of the house, but I think this is something that's really important and something that needs to be addressed. And I hope everyone's having a good Thanksgiving. Wednesday for the Houston Texans was the most embarrassing day in a long, long time, and arguably one of the most important and embarrassing days of Nick Caserio's tenure. Now, it could be a positive thing, but it could also be a context clue for negative things to come. And I think this is a moment where Cal McNair and Hannah McNair, who I think have done a great job, and I think are doing everything they can do, they need to get some answers from this Texans organization as to what the hell happened on Wednesday, and if this is maybe a context clue that maybe Nick Caserio might not be the guy to oversee things moving forward. Before I explain that, let's just go through what happened Wednesday and why it was such a disaster and an embarrassing day for the organization, no matter how you look at it. So Wednesday morning, Nick Caserio comes on the radio. He says he will not say whether or not they're going to have a quarterback change, which is fine. The coach should probably be the one to say that, just like Robert Saleh did a couple hours later in New York. And if he doesn't want to say it, that's fine. Now, there were some other silly things that he said as well, talking about misinformation with Kamu Grugier-Hill, but wouldn't get into specifics on that. He wanted to lecture people about, there's more important things in life than football at the end, which I get what he's trying to say, and I'm sure he thinks it sounds really smart. But in Houston, people already know that. People aren't showing up to the games. People couldn't care less what you do. People who do show up to the games are wearing Astros gear. And I think minimizing the importance of football, while you think you're sounding like more deep, I actually think you're sounding pretty dense and simplistic. You know what I did yesterday with my girl's side of the family? You know how we bonded? After dinner, we sat down, we watched football, and then football led to conversation about life and stuff like that. You know how I bonded with my dad? Football. You know how a lot of people bond? Football. You know why the McNairs have been able to do so much good things in the community? Football. You know why a lot of people have jobs? Not just the ones that make, millions of dollars like you? Football. To minimize it, I think is weird, and I think it's really weird for somebody who minutes before that talked about how he has a personal relationship with Jack Easterby, which is fine, but we know some of the shady stuff that Jack Easterby's done. I'm sure you can talk to people in the building about that. So I don't need you power ranking my morals when you're going to talk about that. I just thought that was weird. I guess I kind of get what he was trying to say, although you combine that with some of the other smug stuff, and I just thought it was a little bit, it was a little bit annoying to me. But that might just be a me thing, although a lot of people seem to agree with it. And let's be honest, you don't have to remind people that there's more important things. All you got to do is walk around NRG, and you can see that. So Caserio refused to address the quarterback change. I kind of digressed there, but that is what that is. Damn, it's cold in Oklahoma. He would not address the quarterback change. Okay. Lovie Smith goes up to the podium. This was an hour after Robert Saleh, who, by the way, if you want to talk about competitive advantages or whatever, Robert Saleh's in a playoff race. They're ahead of the Buffalo Bills in the standings. And he announces that Zach Wilson's been benched. Lovie Smith goes up to the podium, and Lovie Smith gets so pissed off and offended that people are asking him about a change when he's the one who brought up that the change was going to happen. Lovie's the one who said it. He said it on Monday. If it's such a competitive advantage, why would you even mention you're going to make a change? So naturally, people ask about it. It was the first question Robert Saleh was asked, and he did something similar to what Lovie did. You know what Robert Saleh said? We're going to roll with Mike White. So it was no problem for him. So Lovie goes up there. He gets really, really defensive about being asked about something that he brought up that Robert Saleh had no problem saying. And then he gets mad when Brooks Cabina asks him about the competitive advantage, which he also brings up. Fine, you think it's a competitive advantage, all that, that's cool. However, minutes after Lovie Smith goes up to the podium, it leaks that Kyle Allen is going to be the starting quarterback for the Texans. And Pep Hamilton, poor Pep Hamilton, he goes up to the podium, and Pep Hamilton has to deny something that's already been reported. So regardless of what the thought process was on this, it's embarrassing. And I don't expect Lovie Smith to have a grasp of media. He barely has a grasp of football, it appears, in this day and age. But that stuff's going to leak, especially on this team. And when a coach who's one of the good faces of a rebuild that's going well right now doesn't look at it as a competitive advantage, and you can debate this all you want, it brings up more things. But the point is, it got out. And I can promise you, I know the Texans PR team. I haven't talked to them about this or anything. They're not dumb. They're not dumb. And quite honestly, their jobs become more difficult at times because of Jack Easterby in the past. The roster stuff, all that other stuff. But the problem is, this was a Jack Easterby display type of bleep show, and Jack's not here anymore to blame. So why is it that this organization was so hell-bent on not telling who the starting quarterback was? Because there's really not a right answer for it. Either they're delusional and they don't think it's going to leak. This isn't New England. Or they're just focused on stuff that shouldn't matter. And the biggest concern here now is that I could see a situation where the organization's more upset that it leaked out. They need to focus on how they looked silly, because that's what Texans fans are tired of right now. The ones who are hanging around. They're tired of looking silly. They're tired of looking stupid. And regardless of why, I would think that Nick Caserio, Lovie Smith, whoever, can realize you looked stupid on Wednesday. You looked stupid. And we can minimize it, or we can look at it as a potential clue that maybe as much as we hope things will change, maybe they're just kind of remaining the same around here. And that's where I think Cal McNair and Hannah McNair, I'm not saying they got to fire Caserio. I don't want Caserio fired, but they do need to at least talk to the organization and figure out what the hell went on Wednesday. Because you're either obsessing over stuff that doesn't matter, you're repeating history, or you're just so out of touch with what your football team is that you think they're just going to be tight-lipped like the old school Patriots. And that's not going to happen. Brandon Cooks won't even acknowledge what a Caserio culture is at this point. You telling me everyone else isn't going to tell their agent and then it's going to get out? I would bet every bite of food I'm about to eat, and I'm about to eat a delicious spread, that the PR staff knew this was going to leak. If the organization didn't, that's a problem. If it's Lovie, okay, we'll figure that out. If it's Caserio, okay, figure that out. But there are just a lot of context clues right now that this organization makes some silly mistakes. And I don't think Lovie Smith is the right guy for the job after this season. I thought he was the right guy for the job before last season, and I'm starting to wonder. Texans are going to play the Browns next week. Browns were kind of in a similar situation. They were a joke. Sashi Brown was the GM for 2 years. He got him out of that mud. Maybe Caserio might just be the guy that just needs to bring the Texans out of the mud, and then they need to figure something out, because this is a pivotal moment in franchise history. This is very pivotal. They got a massive opportunity in front of them. The dead cap, gone. Draft equity, increased. There's a lot of chances right now for them to do some good things and reignite this fan base. But if Nick Caserio is a reflection of Jack, and Nick Caserio and Lovie Smith are going to give us more days like what we saw on Wednesday, then it needs to be evaluated. And Bill O'Brien, Jack Easterby, they were allowed to do stuff like this, goofy stuff like this, and they were given basically enough rope to hang themselves. Can't do that with Nick. He's got to at least explain what happened on Wednesday. They got to figure some stuff out. They got to tighten it up, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want this organization to not be laughed at. And they're very fortunate right now that they're not in New York, that they're not in Washington, that they're not in Dallas. Because if what had happened Wednesday had happened in a bunch of those other cities, they might have canceled yesterday's Thanksgiving games and just talked about that the whole day, because it would have been the ultimate laughingstock. And I shouldn't be the only one that thinks it was. Don't minimize it. You know, don't minimize it like we did in the past, when B.O.B. was doing his silly stuff, when Jack was doing his silly stuff. We've gotten through this mud together. And again, we are all in this together. But don't minimize how much of a disaster and how embarrassing that was. Seriously, don't do it. Especially when there's a lot of context clues that there's a lot of things similar to Jack Easterby and Nick Caserio. You can grow from it. Maybe you can explain what happened, but you got to learn from it, because that type of stuff can't happen. And it's very, very important. The most important thing is for Nick Caserio, the entire organization, to at least have to speak for what happened, because it's going to be one of the most exciting, important off seasons of all time. And you can't let that same stuff continue to happen, because you're in serious jeopardy of losing a lot of people. Man, it's cold out here. People looking at me crazy. I'm in an old Oklahoma neighborhood. They probably don't even know who Nick Caserio is. Maybe they got their priorities right. Maybe they just know that there's more important things than football. Not. They got Sooner and Oklahoma State flags all over the place. So everyone have a good Thanksgiving. I thought this was important enough to address. I think it's very important. I still am intrigued by what Caserio can do, but days like Wednesday, they really make you take a step back. And I just don't think you can minimize just how embarrassing that whole day was. It was a really, really rough day for the organization. Looked bad. Could be a small thing, but it needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked at. Kyle Allen Day on Sunday. We'll do the post-game show. Keep that going. At Landry Locker on Twitter. At Landry Locker on Instagram. Locker Room channel right here. Gonna keep these videos coming. Only gonna get better as the year goes on. But hopefully better days are ahead. And look, if this is addressed, and maybe Caserio is the Texans Sashi Brown, and he can just get you through the mud, which I actually think he did a pretty decent job of getting him through the mud, and then you bring someone else in to maybe crank it up a notch, that's fine. Don't want that, but days like Wednesday can't happen, because that was embarrassing, and it can be a sign of bigger things. Just like Jack Easterby with the rosters, not putting names on the rosters, all the other petty stuff that he did. Just like the random pick swap in the Hopkins trade, the 4th round swap. Nick Caserio did a trade just like that for Marcus Cannon. Marcus Cannon's getting paid $5 million from the Texans this year. He did nothing. So there are a lot of things to at least make note of. And hopefully, I like Nick. Hopefully Nick is the right guy. But that was embarrassing. And despite what he feels that he needs to let people know, I think football is very important. I don't think it has to be separated. And until he starts avoiding bleep shows like Wednesday, making some good picks, getting the job done, I just don't really need that lesson. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope everyone has a good day. I hope everyone has a good weekend. I'll talk to you later. And remember, no matter how bad it gets, we're all in this together. I'm freezing my ass off.